And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm National Weather Service meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska Aviation Weather Outlook on this Wednesday, June 11th, 2025. And to set things up as of this Wednesday, there's still a weakening area of low pressure here over the Gulf. It's very weak, but a few showers wrapped around it. And back to the west, we have low pressure in the western Bering, but another low will be coming up out of the North Pacific, crossing the central Aleutians Thursday night into early Friday morning. Meanwhile, here to the east, we're going to have an easterly wave pull across the panhandle Thursday afternoon and night, and then eventually some of that moisture and energy will translate across south central as we get into Sunday. So in the meantime, this warm ridge of high pressure is going to be building over the mainland, and it's going to be quite notable. We're talking about temperatures in the 70s and 80s here across the interior. Areas of the North Slope are going to see temperatures this weekend, even 60, some 70-degree readings. It's going to lead to rapid snow melt. As a result, we are anticipating potential for flooding on the rivers of the North Slope coming up here later this weekend, and especially as we go through the early middle part of next week. Meanwhile, South Central is going to warm up nicely. Anchorage will likely hit its first 70-degree reading here, probably by Friday afternoon. And Fairbanks will see some 80-degree plus readings here as we go through the weekend. But as a result, we still have Thursday morning some IFR conditions for the intercoastal mountains, like around Wrangell, Hyder, above Juneau. But mainly out to the west here, there's a broad southerly flow coming in ahead of this low out over the western Gulf, and it's pulling in milder, moist air. And you cross the colder waters of the Bering this time of the year, that leads to low stratus, fog, areas of rain or rain showers. This frontal system that'll be coming eastward will also spread some showers along the areas of the west coast, as well as down here into the Aleutians and lower parts of the Alaska peninsula. But as we get into Thursday afternoon with the heating, there could be some isolated to scattered thunderstorms develop over areas of the eastern and southern interior, including around the terrain, the Talkeetna Mountains, Wrangell St. Elias, on up toward 40-mile Gold Country, lower Yukon Flat. So anywhere within this quadrant of the southeast parts of the mainland, next couple of days, Thursday and Friday afternoon, we could see some isolated showers and storms. Friday morning, VFR across much of the mainland with a high pressure in place, the warming temperatures. We look at MVFR conditions, northeastern Gulf Coast and much of the Panhandle. Along the west coast, either MVFR or IFR coming up into the YK deltas and certainly back towards St. Lawrence, Nunavik Island and the Pribilofs, as well as eastern Aleutians. For Friday afternoon, again with the daytime heating and even warmer temperatures, we expect some scattered showers and isolated to scattered thunderstorms across especially this southeastern quadrant of the mainland. The Panhandle should generally be VFR then, and along areas once you get off of the North Slope, along the Arctic coast, Chukchi Sea down through the Bering Strait, including St. Lawrence, St. Matthew and the Pribilofs, eastern Aleutians, IFR conditions will rule there. And looking at the passes Thursday, Anatuvik Pass, VFR conditions with notable warming. Last weekend we're dealing with the late season accumulating snow. Same thing, Adigan Pass, East Central Brooks Range, VFR conditions with warming temperatures. Lake Clark, Merrill, VFR. And as we round up along the Alaska Range, Rainy Pass, VFR. Windy Pass, VFR, but over as you fly southeast of there, the Talkeetna Mountains, or you're flying eastward along the Alaska Range, there could be some cumulus buildup, scattered showers, isolated storms, not out of the question both Thursday and Friday afternoon. And as we go up here through the area around Isabel Pass, potentially there are going to be some cumulus buildups and some scattered showers, isolated thunderstorms. Same thing, Mentasta Pass for Thursday, VFR, but watch out for those cumulus buildups there in the afternoon and evening with the potential for some isolated storms. Same thing, Tanita Pass coming down through the Copper River Basin, VFR, but potential for isolated scattered storms developing with the daytime heating. Portage should generally enjoy VFR conditions for Thursday, and then across the north end of the Panhandle, we're looking at MVFR conditions for Chilkoot and White. So on the map here that shows surface temperatures, most areas will be above freezing, though it is interesting to note I saw that king salmon has had a couple record low temperatures the past morning. This morning, 29, the day before 30. But we have this ridge of high pressure, not just at the surface, but in mid and upper levels of the atmosphere. And this is going to allow warming across much of the mainland here going into the weekend as we close out this week. There is a pocket of cooler air aloft, freezing levels below 4,000 feet here in the lower southeast portion of the Gulf. That's that weak, very weak area of low pressure. The easterly wave that's going to come out of Canada will swing across the panhandle as we get into Thursday afternoon and Thursday night. Behind me, we have cooler pocket air aloft where freezing levels are below 4,000 feet north of the western Aleutians. But out ahead of it, this front is pulling freezing levels, higher freezing levels aloft, which indicates warmer air aloft. And that's all streaming northward, and a pretty brisk southerly flow here across the eastern Bering and west coast of the state. So this is going to allow for more in the way of some rapid melting of the ice. What little is left, there's a few areas south of St. Lawrence Island, but up here in the Chukchi Sea we'll see melting, and of course the big snow melt that'll be happening along the North Slope, causing those North Slope rivers to rapidly rise, with the potential of flooding coming up here as we go through the later weekend and early next week. And then here we have icing potential within the precipitation bearing thicker clouds along the west coast with that southerly flow above 8,000 feet, YK deltas, Seward Peninsula. And then as you get down here, the warmer air aloft, as I showed you, the freezing levels aloft were at least 8,000 feet plus, so you have to get above 10,000 feet or more here to get icing in the clouds over the lower Bering and over the central eastern Aleutians. And then the scattering of showers and thunderstorms you have to watch out for here in the southeast areas around the Alaska range. Get up to the White Mountains, 40-mile Gold Country, lower Yukon Flats, Tanana Valley, Copper River Basin, Talkeetna Mountains. And winds aloft, not a lot of wind over the mainland. We do find winds. Here's the low circulation, surprisingly well-defined there at 30,000 feet. Stronger jet core, 110 knots out over the central Bering. At 9,000 feet, we can still see that low circulation. At the mid-levels, this is 700 millibars, the low situated southeast quadrant of the Gulf. But a broad belt of south-southwest winds in the mid-levels, ranging from 35 to locally over 60 knots, especially here in the lower Bering north of the eastern Aleutians, up through the Pribilovs. And then at 3,000 feet, very clearly you can see the strongest wind field with the low that remains here at the surface, or surface to 3,000 feet, is south of this weakening low center. And then back here along the west coast, very prevalent broad southerly flow that extends from the North Pacific all the way up through the Bering Strait to along the Chukchi Sea coastline. We're looking at winds 35 to 45 knots with a few areas pushing 50 knots as you get south of the Aleutians down in the North Pacific. And this all translates to the greatest threat for any turbulence. Moderate turbulence on Thursday will extend from areas around the Lisburne Peninsula, Cape Lisburne, Point Hope, the western areas of the Seward Peninsula, including the Bering Strait through St. Lawrence Island, and then down here across the lower portion of the Alaska Peninsula and in through the eastern half of the Aleutians. On Thursday, expect some considerable moderate turbulence in that southerly flow from the surface to 4,000 feet.